We're always betting against one future in favor of a potential other. Consider this. You bet when you put a deposit down on one car over another. You bet when you send out a job application. You bet when you decide to marry your partner. You bet when you pack your moving boxes and seek a better life in a new town or city. I mean, for God's sakes, you bet when you try the generic brand of cereal. With infinite possibilities before you, literally infinite, mathematically so. Some choices, of course, beckon more loudly than others, and some pressures really make you sweat. So you naturally, especially in these super important cases, you want to make the right decision, the guaranteed right answer, which makes sense because there's this idea that you're after a golden, gleaming, perfect, but elusive right decision. And once you make that right decision, you'll reap your just rewards. At least that's how you think. But Annie Duke says that's great, natural even, but it's also completely wrong. A right decision doesn't always equate to a positive outcome. And more than that, help from experts, due diligence, and experience can ensure that you can bet against bad luck. Now, personally, I'm not a big believer in luck. I'm more of a bootstrapping, no excuses, make your own destiny type of guy. If you're listening to any other lesson that I've given, you probably know this to be true. But the following is also true. Life is much of the time totally out of your control. Most of the lessons that we teach are about how to best control the few aspects of your life that you can control and how to react appropriately and positively, how you hedge your bets towards success for all the rest. Which I know, this is all uncomfortable. At least that's how it sounds. Who wants to bet on their future? Better to guarantee and to know, right? Yeah, absolutely. And you can to an extent, but the devil, as is the case when you're dealing with precision, is always in the details. Because here's the thing, a bet at its core is this, a decision about an uncertain future. And since we can never be absolutely certain about any future, all we can do is make the best bet we possibly can in any given situation. And if you do this, if you can retain your brain and see that your life is like a poker game with uncertainty, with deception, and somewhere in the mix, some absolute truths thrown in there, you can and will win. You win when you begin to see your past decisions as lessons where the strategies and outcomes teach you how to make better decisions in the future. If you can learn to play the game, you can make quality choices. And if you can make quality choices, you increase your odds of success. Remember, there's a reason why the same 10 players win all the World Series of Poker Championship, and it's not because they're lucky. Duke's own story, as an example, is a testament to her savvy, if untraditional, decision making. She had already wrapped up a double major in English literature and psychology at Columbia and was weeks away from her doctoral dissertation in cognitive linguistics when she made a bet. Not a literal bet, but a decision that in essence said, I would wager everything that academia is not my path. She picked up her entire life and moved to a rural town out west, where, as luck would have it, she found a poker table. Her brother, poker great Howard Lederer, coached her on some basics, and then, with that, she was off, gambling with the grizzled ranchers of Billings, Montana. But here's what made Duke different from the rest. Her academic background stuck. She began to see the poker table as a new kind of laboratory. A hand of poker can tick down in about 2 minutes, and in that 2 minutes, you can rack up as many as 20 decisions. And then conveniently, each hand ends with an outcome, either positive or negative, a win or a loss. This, she thought, is something special. A decision laboratory, if you will. The only variable that mattered, she realized, was what poker players learned from their own wins or their losses, or if they learned anything at all. The overly superstitious were quickly eliminated. The highly random players were, no surprise, inconsistent. But the best players avoided common traps, learned from their results, and kept emotions out of the game. They used every win and every loss to make themselves better card players. And that's what Duke wants you to be as well. No, not better poker players necessarily, but students of your own decisions. Makes sense? Yes, makes sense. But what does that mean? Well, first, it means that you must reflect on past decisions. And no, that doesn't mean fret and overanalyze and ruminate. It also doesn't mean daydreaming about what could have been. It means simply that you should learn to separate a decision from its outcome, which sounds strange, but here's what I mean. Poker players refer to this thing they call resulting, where people instinctively draw an overly tight correlation between the decision that they made and the outcome of that decision. If you think about our origins, this idea makes sense. You see, our brains as humans developed at a time when we were also avoiding becoming lions' dinners. So evolution spared those who ran from rustling in the bush. It didn't, on the other hand, care much for truth seekers, those who had to investigate whether that noise was a stalking lioness or a couple of mating birds. Though today, nearly all of us live in a different different world than that one. But our brains still want to assume knowledge rather than fact checking. Your brain prefers to take the temporary reward over the long-term investment. Your instinct, therefore, is to be cautious, to just assume that everything is trying to eat you. Decision, not the outcome, because that decision once had big, even deathly consequences. In the recent past, it paid to be overly cautious, and your hardwired brain remembers this. But Duke calls on a different game to explain why resulting is no way to gather information for better decisions. In short, we have a natural tendency to judge the efficacy of our decisions on their outcomes, i.e. resulting, but this is a terrible way of thinking. One of the best examples actually comes from the Super Bowl. Imagine this. It's 2015, and the Seattle Seahawks are 1 yard away from beating the Patriots in Super Bowl 59. With 26 seconds on the clock, Coach Pete Carroll is expected to call for a handoff to his running back, but he doesn't. The Patriots intercept the quarterback's surprise pass, and they win the game. Fans are disappointed. The next day, the headlines are absolutely ruthless. Was this a bad call by the coach? No, and here's why. Duke asks you to tune out the Monday morning quarterbacks and judge the playbook instead. By all accounts, this unexpected play really should have worked. If you studied passes at the 1 yard line that season, where exactly 0 had been intercepted, you'd have to admit that an interception was actually an unlikely outcome. Some pundits, outliers, agree with Duke that this play was, as it lived on the chalkboard, a brilliant play. Of course, they don't give Super Bowl rings for great plays that don't actually pay off. Still, Duke wants you to acknowledge that Coach Carroll's innovation. You might be tempted to join the chorus of boos, but this was, sorry, Seahawks fans, not technically a bad decision. By passing, barring a catastrophe, it gave his team 3 chances to score instead of only 2. Now, granted, that catastrophe unexpectedly happened, but it was a good choice no less. Duke advises you against blanket statements that Carroll made the wrong call. Why did he make the wrong call? Because you would be equating an essentially good decision with its poor outcome. And the two are connected, yes, but they are connected by bad luck, not by logic or statistics. And this distinction makes all the difference. The truth is that there is nothing to learn from an outcome when it is mostly the result of luck. Whereas you have everything to learn from a decision when you separate what's in your control from what's out of your control. Luck doesn't give you much to learn from. Sure, hindsight bias, rampant for every Monday morning quarterback after a Super Bowl, makes consequences seem inevitable, but they're not. Or as another example, let's narrow our scopes. Narrow your scope and bring this idea of resulting down from national television to the mundane every day. Let's say one day a decision to cut out the 2-minute wait from my commute. Rather than hit the crosswalk button, I step blindly into traffic. And let's say that rather than checking both directions for cars, I stare down, seeing nothing but the pavement under my jaywalking feet. Cars whiz past, but somehow miraculously I'm untouched. And what's this? I bend down for 2 $20 bills dropped in my path. Stuffing the bills into my pocket, I whistle the rest of my way home to the curb. Okay, so I've cut down my commute by a few minutes and I've made money in the process. Does that positive outcome make this morning's breezy jaunt a good decision? Should I be writing the book on how to beat the morning commute blues? Of course not. In this scenario, my getting to work in one piece was a fluke. The probability that I make it across the street unharmed is nothing I would want to bet on. And certainly, it's not a bet Duke or any sane person would make. So you're asking, what's the alternative? You can't lose again and again and again and defend your choices by claiming bad luck. Results must have a place in decision making, right? Right, they do, but not on an island. The key then is to look at the evidence surrounding the decision, not just the decision itself. The more evidence that you get from experiences, the more certainty you have about your own beliefs and choices. You learn then by actively examining outcomes, then testing them against reality. In fact, set up your own decision-making lab, like Duke did at the Smokey Billings poker table. Interpret your experiences. Take the lump of data that is your outcomes and start connecting the dots. What worked? What didn't work? Why? And then try it again. Then try again. Come up with theories, hypotheses, and then test those hypotheses again against reality. Listen, you're great at identifying what Duke calls ER goals. I want to be better. I want to be smarter. I want to be richer, and so on. You've got vision boards and New Year's resolutions. The grand moonshot dream. Perfect. Good. But that's the easy part. The problem, as usual, is that we often trip up in the execution. The bets you make, the decisions from moment to moment that you make are where you're most likely to fail. And they're also the best places to learn. To make the ER goals a reality, you have to know when your outcome has something to teach you, a repeatable skill. And sometimes you have to learn how to disregard luck. If life were as orderly as as, say, chess, you wouldn't need this book. Each of your actions would result in an exact consequence. You would happily move along diagonally or in L-shapes predictably through the squares of life. Poker, though, is messy. Everyone at the table has a different hand, not a set number of specific pieces. Time is ticking away. You're trying to look calm while calculating what could you gain or lose in the next few seconds. And on top of that, there's this voice in your head saying everyone else has a better hand than yours, or maybe they have a worse hand. Sound familiar? This scene might look a lot like a recent presentation at the office, or feel like your last big interview, or a big sales call with a potential client. The truth is, your life is often as stressful as a high-stakes poker game. But unlike poker, where you hide your hands, you don't always have to go it alone in the real world. Instead of wrestling with a decision on your own, Duke encourages, and I wholeheartedly agree, to reach out to other people. Rather than fret over a new direction for your company in isolation, seek counsel from a mentor. Don't wonder what others think of your product. Have them test it out and experience it themselves and get feedback. Your decision process benefits from feedback. Yes, outcomes can be feedback, but people can also help you make better choices. Duke encourages you to seek the advice of others. In fact, she challenges you to collaborate with people who have very different viewpoints than your own. You see, people have a tendency to seek information that confirms their own biases. So if I'm an angry Seahawks fan, I'm going to Google Pete plus Carroll plus idiot to find stories that agree with my personal belief that his decision was a bad call. But if I'm a football coach who really wants to know if I can make a similar play in the future and get better results, I want dissenting voices. What's the counter argument? Tell me why I can repeat Pete Carroll's call with my own quarterback and expect a more favorable outcome next time. Yes, if you haven't figured out this already, I am advising you to become a skeptic. But also, no, I'm not suggesting you become a cynic. I'm asking you to see the bad so that you can make it better. Know your weak spots to make them stronger. In fact, to further emphasize this point, let's join Duke for a moment in admiring this quote from John Stuart Mill, the political philosopher who wrote On Liberty. Stay with me here. The only way in which a human being can make some approach to knowing the whole of a subject is by hearing what can be said about it by persons, by every variety of opinion, and studying all modes in which it can be looked at by every character of mind. No wise man ever acquired his wisdom in any mode but this, nor is it in the nature of human intellect to become wise in any other manner. Great, right? Put simply, we are limited by our own narrow viewpoints. The scope, though, widens when we expose ourselves to varied viewpoints of others. Other people, and this is a good thing, they point out our blind spots. They can see from a different perspective. That's why they are so valuable. Because when we see the world more clearly, we make more rational decisions and, more importantly, better bets. If we're betting on our viewpoint, we'd better hope that that belief is true. Of course, we can do better than hope. We can expose ourselves to alternative viewpoints, we can test our hypotheses, we can move ever closer to an accurate objective truth. But here's the tough part. To make better decisions, you need to stop guarding your beliefs. We all intellectually, as a result of evolution, are vulnerable to confirmation bias, but the opinions of others are a kind of safeguard against this self-preserving narrative. So to be practical, try this. Consider a big decision that you need to make. Which way are you leaning? Now, are you certain that that's the best choice? Chances are you're not ready to answer that question, which is fine, naturally. So instead, start here. First, ask yourself, why might my belief not be true? What other evidence might be out there bearing on my belief that I don't yet know? What source of information could I have misinterpreted on the way to reaching my conclusion? What other perspectives could be out there as to why things turned out the way that they did? These aren't easy questions, I know, but other people who aren't as concerned with helping you preserve your own narrative can help you to answer them honestly. And honestly, this is what you need when you're working to improve the quality of your decision making. Look, I know what you're thinking. You're a bright person, you have good ideas, you might even call yourself an expert in your field. Maybe you are. So why does Duke want to discredit your vision when you're well-meaning and capable? Well, because even smart people are susceptible to fake news and misinformation. In fact, intelligent people are actually better at spinning new information to fit their current worldview, and other people are simply just better at spotting blind spots in other people than in themselves. We're simply no good at finding our own biases. Very difficult. That's why the truly smart thing to do is to invite others to share their understandings with you. Understand? Ask for feedback from your trusted advisors. Pick a decision making and drill in. Be objective and then test that decision. That's the plan. I want you to remember that self-improvement and self-analysis go hand in hand. By thinking in bets, you puzzle out the elements that influence your outcomes so that you can become a better decision maker and a better person. But along with all of this self-analysis, you need to leave a little room for self-compassion. You need to forgive yourself of your trespasses along the way. You can be more rational in your decision and your actions and also remain compassionate to yourself in the process. If you find out that you were wrong, it's okay. You're human. We're all wrong. Okay, so the game starts now, and it starts with this choice. The decision you're making to dive in deeper to this book, for example, to keep listening is a bet. Yes. So what are you willing to wager that is going to change your life, especially only for 30 minutes a day? I hope that helped. Thanks for listening. Until next time. Cheers.